Hey there, my name is Shane Craddock, and this is the Inner Edge podcast, where I share a different take on how to lead and live a sustainable, high performance life. Over the course of different episodes, I'm going to challenge the belief that tension, stress, and struggle are essential to success and creativity. My experience is that there's an easier way, there's a better way, and indeed there's an essential way that we need to explore for the times that we live in. So let's go ahead, let's jump in and explore. Hi there, welcome to the very first Inner Edge episode of 2025. This is, so I suppose on that basis, I should say Happy New Year. If you're listening to me in current time, then Happy New Year. Who knows though when you're listening to this, but regardless of when you listen to this episode, I'm going to share some things in this that is, I think, are basically relevant at any time of the year, because it's about asking yourself really what you want to create over the coming year and beyond, and creating something special. Now, as I'm recording it, obviously it is early January 2025, as I said. It's a new year. A lot of people start thinking about resolutions. I'm not a believer in New Year's resolutions. I think most of the research anyway shows that they don't really work. But I am a fan of turning a new page. I think the way that the world is set up to kind of end one year, turn into a new, it is a great psychological opportunity to reflect on where you're really at. And I think to ask yourself something very important, a key question, which is what would you like, what would you love to create? And I think that's the key point I want to get across in today's episode, is to focus more on what you'd love to create. And not even what you want, but what would you love to create? What excites you? What would kind of really energize you? Now, in my job, over 25 years, I would ask people a lot about, well, what do you want? And most of the time, you might be surprised at this, I don't know, but most of the time they don't really know. Or if they do know, it's very often limited, very limited and narrow, and not really broad, because it's only based on what they've seen or some ideas they've heard from somebody else or what they grew up around. And part of my job as an advisor or mentor or coach or partner in success is to maybe help expand their ideas of what's possible, but also to give them permission to say what's deep inside that perhaps they've given up on, or they just feel it's not possible. And I think it's one of my favorite things is to figure out or help the person to say out loud, what do you think is impossible? But if you could do it, it'd be amazing. Actually, as a funny aside, well, I don't know if it is funny, but most people can tell you more quickly what they don't want than what they want. It's an interesting phenomenon, but it's much more common than the other way around. Some stories to share. I'm thinking of a client who a few years ago told me what he wanted, but as we were talking, it just didn't feel that they were really believing it. It just didn't seem like they were aligned to what they said they wanted. And as we kept on talking, I suppose I kept on digging and asking questions. And see, the reason that they were there in front of me was because they weren't really happy with the way their life was, their work was, their business was. And as we kept digging, they and me came to realization that they wanted to be in a very different career, in a very different industry, as it turned out. And we gave them permission to say, well, hang on, look, if there was no shackles of where you're at right now, which is the past and the present of your current life, like, what would you love to create? What would you love to do? And they mentioned a specific type of career. It was very clear. They'd always thought about it, but for a variety of different reasons, they hadn't gone into it. Anyway, long story short, that became their intention. They had a clarity of intent on a new direction. They put a stake in the ground of a new mountain that they wanted to, I guess, climb. And they did that. And so there's amazing power in clarity of intent if you give yourself permission to, I think, answer that question around what would you love to create. It's amazing. But very often when people ask that question, they won't give themselves permission, and B, whatever answers come in, they're too quick to let their mind, their inner voice come in and go, yeah, but how? Or that's not going to happen. That's not possible. So shut it down. Which I think is a crime. I'm also thinking of myself as a younger version of Shane back when I was working in the corporate world. And, back when post my breakdown, I got very much into goal setting, goal achievement, got very clear on goals for every element of my life. Looking back, I think I became a compulsive goal setter, which actually was dangerous because when you're a compulsive goal setter, which I think a lot of people are, by the way, in today's world, you tend to get overtired, overexhausted, burnt out, just overwhelmed in every aspect, even though you might have clarity of goals. But what was interesting for me was after a few years, I realized that while I was clear on my goals and I could tell you what I want, they weren't really aligned to the real me, the true me, and what I really, really wanted, what I would love to create. It was more to do with setting goals that I thought would bring me happiness and success. And it took a while, but eventually I had to admit that to myself, that I didn't feel that my goals were aligned to the real version of myself. There wasn't an authenticity about it. I was more doing something that I'd inherited from society or whatever. And in time, then I realized, okay, let's ask that question. What would I love to create? And that set me off in a new direction. And yes, it was scary at times, but the rewards, I suppose, have been massive. Also to inspire, I'm thinking of another client who in their business, there were several directors in this business, several owners. And when I asked the question, what would you love to create? After a little bit of sheepishness, maybe even embarrassment, they said, look, I'd love to have a very different role in my existing business, but that role doesn't exist. And I said, well, explain the role to me. And the role was kind of a blend of different things that are probably more common now to do with social media, online stuff, digital stuff. But this was back in a time where it wasn't really a thing. So we dreamed up a new role. We gave it a title. Essentially, it was almost like the digital manager, digital director for the business. Also, the dream was to create new products, to move into a different home that are in a different location. It was quite specific. And what was interesting about this client was they created what you would call a vision board. And I always remember because they gave me a copy of it. It's in my office. And the vision board was so clear. And he told me he looked at this all the time. Now, some people will have different views on vision boards. I kind of sometimes do them, sometimes I don't. But it's certainly very, very helpful if you're clear on an authentic intent, as in it lines up with the real you. And this one did for this guy. But what's amazing to me is that everything on that happened. And he said to me, after a couple of years into the journey of creating that vision, that it almost scared him, the power of it. But all of that started with asking that question, what would you love to create? What would you love to create? And one of the things that I've learned myself, and I continuously experiment with this now, and even going into this year, I'm going to up my ambition around clarity of intent just for fun to see, well, how far can you take this? But one of the things I've learned is, and this is a watch, is that when you get clear on your clarity of intent, don't make the fatal mistake, which is that we can often say, well, where I am is crap. So don't make where you are wrong, because sometimes you can look into the distance or faraway hills and then come back and your mind goes, yeah, but I'm here and I want to be there. So here is crap. And then you put yourself into bad form, into a bad mood, without sometimes even realizing it. And then you're on a downward spiral. And if your state and mood drops, that really is the key variable that really compromises everything. It compromises your clarity, compromises your ability to even get clarity of intent. You tend to get stuck in problems. You tend to beat yourself up more, and then you tend to not take action where it matters. So just watch out on that. As a little plug, by the way, I am doing something new this year. I'm going to do a one-off webinar on Monday, the 13th of January, where I'm going to spend an hour where my goal is going to be to inspire people who attend. I'm going to give out some food for thought from my own learnings in 2024. I'm going to give some ideas, some insights, some frameworks, all geared towards helping you create the best year yet in 2025. So if you would like to spend some time, it'll be high return time, 60 minutes. It'll be a bit of fun. It'll be light. And I'll be sharing things that you won't necessarily get in any other context. So check it out. It's a low cost, but very high return. And the link to the details and registration will be somewhere around this podcast. So what about you anyway? Like, what would you love to create in the year ahead? Or even take it further. What would you love to create over the next 10 years? Over the next 3 years? Like, what would you love to create in all aspects of your life in terms of financial, health, how you work, what you work in, your relationships, your sense of purpose? What would you love to create? How you are, your state, your being, your ability to be present. What would you love to create? It's a great question. And then even get a notebook or a page and start writing down some answers. But as you look at your answers, I'd encourage you to just objectively look at them and see if they're based on genuinely going for what you'd love to create, or are they secretly really kind of playing it safe, going with what I would call a plus 10% approach, where you're kind of saying, yeah, I'll do like last year plus 10% in all aspects of my life. And I think that's where we lose our potential. That if you're looking to unlock your potential, really, I'd encourage you to kind of move into the area of what your mind thinks is the impossible. And that should be your measure, that it might seem your mind goes, this is amazing, but yeah, but how? Then you're in the right direction. And just give yourself the gift of 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes, to just start writing down some of the answers, but then keep going over the following days, maybe even weeks. It's not a one-off answer. I think it's an evolving answer. The purpose is to inspire you, but also to get clarity of intent as to what you want to go. And then your job is to kind of keep that intent in the focus zone of your mind. Now, there's one quote that's quite famous that I'm going to read out to you now, which I think you probably know, but it's such a special quote that I don't think you can actually hear enough of it. And it's by W.H. Murray from the Scottish Himalayan Expedition. Here we go. Until one is committed, there is hesitancy, the chance to draw back, always ineffectiveness. Concerning all acts of initiative or creation, there is one elementary truth, that the moment one definitely commits oneself, then providence moves too. All sorts of things occur to help one that would otherwise never have occurred. A whole stream of events issues from the decision, raising in one's favour all manner of incidents and meetings and material assistance which no man would have believed would have come his way. Whatever you think you can do, or believe you can do, begin it. Action has magic grace and power in it. A super quote. Now, the only thing I'd probably challenge or tweak would be the very last line, when it says, whatever you think you can do or believe you can do, begin it. I'm going to challenge that. Even if you don't believe you can do it, but you'd love to kind of move in that direction, then just begin it. Because the next bit is true. Action has magic, grace, and power in it. And it is my experience that when you move in a new direction, or a direction that really has meaning for you, right? You shouldn't know the full pathway. But once you take a step, you'll see the next step. But without a doubt, from the work that I've seen with my clients and myself, it is 100% true that once you move from a decision in a direction, there's definitely something happens, whether it's synchronistic or something else. But people come in, information comes in, new thinking comes in, fresh ideas come in, material assistance, as it says in the quote, comes in, which you couldn't have believed would have otherwise happened. I've seen it happen too many times for it not to be true. It is true. So with that in mind, I'm going to ask you again, what would you love to create this year and beyond? What seems impossible, but you'd love to create it? That's the question I go back to myself. If I was going back 25 years ago to talk to myself and say, hey, what would you love to create? And I've been lucky enough to see a lot of what I wanted, what I'd love to be created, but there's more to go. And I'm always curious as to how far you can stretch this. So for you, in all aspects of your work, your business, and your life, what would you love to create? And maybe this year, like, let's take the shackles off. Go for it. That's it. Might see you on the webinar. Check out the link in the show notes. Bye-bye.